All right, so today we're diving into a really tough ethical problem. What happens when a force that believes in absolute judgment goes up against a system of absolute corruption? We're going to explore what looks like an unwinnable war and the just agonizing choices that come with fighting pure evil.
And this is really the question at the heart of it all, isn't it? I mean, when the law, the media, the politicians, when they're all just tools for the very evil you're trying to take down, what options do you even have left? It really forces you into this grim debate about whether the ends can ever justify the means.
So let's break down our two players here. You've got the Slayer, this force that operates completely outside the law, handing out a kind of justice that's as lethal as it is final. And on the other side, Vought International, a corporate giant so powerful, so protected, it's basically its own country. Any normal attack just bounces right off.
So what you have here is the setup for what feels like a totally unwinnable war. And right at the center of it is this huge moral dilemma that makes us question everything we think we know about justice. So here's the dilemma laid out for us. Are dead innocents just a grim but necessary price you have to pay to take down an evil that nobody else can touch? Or does causing that much damage actually make you just as bad as the monster you're trying to fight?
Okay, so first let's actually make the case for the Slayer's methods. This is what we're calling the case for chaos. The idea that when you're up against a fortress like Vought, the only tool that's going to work is a sledgehammer.
You've got to understand, Vaught's invincibility wasn't just about Supes with laser eyes. No, it was a fortress built by lawyers, PR teams, and lobbyists. They could bury any crime. From assaults by Supes like the Deep to A-Train's lethal negligence, all of it disappeared under a mountain of NDAs and cash settlements. The system wasn't just broken, it was built to protect them.
I mean, this quote, it just says everything, doesn't it? When you're facing an enemy whose lawyers are described as being worth more than God, your normal options are completely off the table. A lawsuit? That's a joke. A news story? Buried in an hour. The game was rigged from the very start.
And this is absolutely crucial to understand. The violence, it wasn't just random. It was psychological warfare. The real target wasn't just a building. It was Homelander's public image, this aura he had of being an untouchable god. The whole point was to crack that facade wide open for the entire world to see.
And this is how that strategy played out. The argument goes that this was a kind of necessary shock therapy. These very public, very gruesome executions, they forced Vought into a defensive position. It shattered their control over the story because, let's be real, you can't spin a public execution. This initial wave of violence, this chaos, it was argued to be the essential first move that made every other attack possible later on.
But all that chaos, it came with a huge price tag. Every action has a reaction. And in this war, the consequences for everyday people were absolutely devastating.
12. Just think about that number for a second. 12 civilians were killed during that raid on Vaught's data facility. The Slayer's maximum force approach caused a structural collapse and it crushed people in the apartments right above the facility.
And then there's this number, 47. 47 innocent people died when Homelander, completely panicking during his fight with the Slayer, just melted the structural supports of Vought Tower. The choice to fight him right there, right then, put all those lives directly in the crossfire.
And here is the truly bitter irony in all of this. The chaos didn't reveal the truth. Nope. It just gave Vought a better story to tell. After all that public destruction, Vought had no trouble painting the Slayer as just another super terrorist. Look at the numbers. Public opinion swung hard against him. 73% of people saw him as the villain. His own methods handed his enemy the perfect PR win.
This quote just perfectly captures the entire argument against this approach. It's the idea that it doesn't matter how right you think you are. If your methods start to look like the enemy's, with the same disregard for innocent life, you've already lost. The very foundation of what you're doing is poisoned.
And wow, look at this comparison. It tells you everything you need to know. The maximum force raid in Jersey City, a total failure. They lost the evidence and killed 12 civilians. But the surgical precision job at Grand Central, a complete success. They got a massive amount of data out and not a single civilian was harmed.
I mean, the takeaway here is pretty undeniable, right? The single biggest hit against Vought came from the action that involved the least violence. It's pretty powerful evidence that maybe, just maybe, strategy and restraint were way better weapons than just brute force.
So, This all brings us right back to where we started, to this impossible choice where you're stuck trying to weigh how effective an action is against how morally right it is. It's a total minefield.
And just look at the fallout from that one restrained action. The data leak caused a 40% drop in Vought stock. It forced their CEO, Standguard, to flee. And it triggered something called Protocol 7, which is basically Vought's internal panic button. This was real, systemic damage, and it was done with information, not an explosion.
So at the end of the day, you're left with these two totally competing ideas. Was the first wave of chaos just a grim necessity? The ugly shock therapy that had to happen to crack Vought open for that later, more precise attack? Or was it just a moral failure that mirrored Vought's own evil and, in the end, wasn't even as effective as being smart and restrained?
You know, maybe the hardest thing to accept here is that in a system this rotten, there might not be a good option on the table. The choice isn't between doing the right thing and the wrong thing. It's between a bad choice and an even worse one. It's like ethical triage in a situation with no good outcomes.
And that's what we're left with. This one final question to really chew on. Is getting the justice you want worth the absolute chaos it brings down on innocent people? Is cleansing a corrupt system worth the price that's paid by all those caught in the crossfire? Yeah. The answer is anything but simple.